into the teeth of the plague victims to sequence the plague DNA to see if it's all the same strain of Yersinia pestis. And it's kind of an interesting bacterium because it's fairly unchanged. Sometimes you see lots of variation between ancient organisms and more modern ones, but the Yersinia pestis has been pretty consistent.
For the ones they dig up, is it possible that they can get plague from those ones that are in there, or does the plague actually die once they've
So the bacteria aren't alive anymore, but they're looking at the DNA that's left over. Okay. Yeah, and actually the DNA is usually in pieces, and they have to kind of stitch together. It's fairly technically complex. Yeah. This is technology that we have now that we didn't have, say, when I was in college. This is all new since we have been able to sequence DNA.
Just to be clear, it's vector-based and humans can't pass it to each other?
Humans can pass it to each other. Yeah. This is a recent outbreak. There was plague in Madagascar. Just so you know, the people around the world still died of the plague. There were 200 deaths in Madagascar from August to November 2017. So don't even memorize it, but just know that it's still out there and it still kills people, although not super commonly. So the most common way to get the plague is actually through flea bites. So basically you come in contact with a rodent or a pet that has gotten the plague, and the flea jumps off the rodent and jumps on you and bites you and transmits the bacterium to you. So if you are hiking in Yosemite, there are rodents there that have plague, and you might get bitten by a flea. And that's usually where we see it's people camping and doing outdoorsy stuff. And certainly North America has plague, infected fleas and rodents. You can get it by contact with contaminated blood. The one that's the most dangerous is pneumonic plague. So that's where you actually get in contact with droplets that have plague bacterium in them, and they get in your lungs. So that's the most dangerous way to get the plague. All of them can kill you. The first time I did Disease of the Day, I got through the first two diseases, and one of the students complained there were no gruesome pictures. And so I said, okay. So this is just showing the swollen lymph nodes. They turn black. They're called buboes. And this is usually from someone who's been bitten by a flea, bitten by fleas. If the plague is in your bloodstream, so this is where it escapes the lymph nodes and actually gets into the blood. It's called septicemic plague. You have septicemia. And so here the person's, where the extremities of skin turn black, and it's pretty gross, right? And then pneumonic plague is when you actually have pneumonia from the plague. So basically it's the plague bacterium that's causing pneumonia. And this is really dangerous, and you can spread it person to person by droplets. Yes? So very lethal form of the plague, pneumonic plague. Usually to detect plague we use phenotypic methods. We look at it under the microscope. I don't know if you can see where the arrow is, but it tends to have this little safety pin when you try to stain it with a gram stain. Kind of looks like a safety pin. So we just get lymph node aspirates. You'll just take a little fluid from the lymph node. If someone's septicemic, we'll get blood cultures or sputum sample from someone who might have suspected pneumonic plague. And people will actually look at a gram stain. But you can also do serological testing, which is where you would actually look for antibodies against plague bacteria in the person's blood. This is kind of an interesting, once I have one of these diseases and Disease of the Day, I'm always finding new studies that have come up. You know, people blamed rats for spreading the plague in Europe that killed half the people. And it's true that rats would get on the ships and travel from continent to continent, and they certainly brought the plague. But they actually looked at the rates of transmission of plague from person to person. And they said, so is it fast enough where a person would get sick and then a flea would bite the person and, you know, was the flea transmitting it? It turns out that people were probably transmitting it to each other from fleas, right? So many people had fleas. Are you following me? It wasn't that they were always getting it. Too many people died too quickly to be getting it from flea bites from animals. It had to be people living in close contact with poor hygiene, where my fleas jumped onto her and bit her and killed her. Because the people had fleas. Have I made that clear? That's how bad it was. So hygiene counts. All right. I'm going to say one more thing here. This is just, it's treatable with antibiotics now. Before you go, this is a great story. So, it turns out that people think that the Renaissance and pubs in Europe were probably the result of the plague. Prior to the plague hitting Europe in the 14th century and killing all those people. People were living in the feudal system, right? We call that feudal system now, where they were serfs and they would work for a lord, and they were really kind of slaves to the lord. Okay? What happened with the plague when you wipe out half of the population is that suddenly all these people would say, I don't like working for you. This other person needs workers, and he's going to pay better. Suddenly wages went up. People were no longer living indentured lives. They had more free time. They estimate that people didn't have as much free time until after the plague killed all those people. There was a period where people had more free time than they did again until the 1960s. Pretty amazing, right? And this is when all this leisure time, pubs, drinking, people used to drink weak beer. They suddenly started becoming kind of an art. People would go to pubs and they drink beer and play games. It was the beginning of the pub in Europe. And this idea that people's life, the quality of life went way up after the plague. So if you survived the plague, the next few generations had a much higher quality of life. Pretty interesting, right? And right after that came the Renaissance. So raise the glass to the... Okay, I'm done. Have a good